Well, good afternoon. Another edition of Fair Game Laguna. Tom Johnson, along with our mayor, Alex Rounaghi. Alex, great to see you.
Great to see you, Tom.
We're also joined by Nico King. Nico, good to see you, Fire Chief.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
I think I was just telling Alex a few minutes ago, you get to these things, and earlier in the week, you're looking like, oh, what are we going to talk about this week? Well, sometimes it just takes care of itself. And although it's good to have you here, Nico, with us, um, really a tough week. Alex, let me go to you first. Where were you when you heard about the fire, and what were your initial concerns?
Yeah. I was at my office in Irvine and I was on a Zoom call, and then suddenly I got several calls from different people as well as the fire watch alert. And I think that in Laguna Beach, I sort of expect that we're going to have wildfires. And, I always say this to you, the question is not if, but when the next wildfire happens. And so I went into it knowing that we have really a good plan in place. And that was really, confirmed, if not in some ways, I came away more confident with our response to wildfires than I did going into it because of what I saw. So I headed straight to the Emergency Operations Center, which was activated. You had all city departments represented there, and it was really government at its best, where everyone was working together, collaborating in a way where things were getting done. We had the communications going out in a seamless way. Mutual aid had already been called in, so we had the helicopters getting involved, and the command plane I think was there as well. And so it was just inspiring to watch. And I think that, the citizens of Laguna Beach are so grateful to have, our firefighters, led by Chief King, who just did such a great job, as well as, our police officers who were involved, all of our city employees who were involved, and then, our mutual aid partners. And it was just amazing to watch the water district getting involved and making sure that we had the adequate water pressure. I think it was a master class in how you deal with a wildfire. And, also I think it wasn't an accident that we were able to get to this position. And we could talk about preparedness and, how we those investments and the role that they played. But overall, it was a very inspiring event. And I came away just very confident about our city government's ability to deal with wildfires. With that being said, there will be another wildfire. So we have to continue learning from, we can always do better, and, make sure that we're always improving our response and learning best practices, and moving forward. So, it was a great day. It could have been a horrible day, but ultimately it was a day of, showing that government can work and keep people safe, which is the number one role of local government.
Well, Chief, I know it's your job to put fires out when they happen, but on behalf of the community, thank you for a job well done. And it might not be something you always hear, but boy, from a community, and what you guys and gals did is amazing. So thank you. Uh, so tell me, Chief, the call comes in for the fire. Take us through it. You know at the time when the call comes in that it's a brush fire. How do you go there? How do you put your plan of attack together to get this initial fire under control, or how you're going to battle it?
Yeah, sure. So the dispatch does come in, and here in Orange County in the summertime, we really try to front load a dispatch. So with a report of a vegetation fire to our dispatch center, it's a large response. It's not just our local fire engines, the four engines that we have here in Laguna Beach, but we like to front load it, meaning that we'll dispatch and get those air resources at least notified and started. There's notifications to our mutual aid partners, and it's a large response that's coming in. We always say that it's a lot easier to not need them and send them back to their quarters than to arrive on scene and know that you're minutes away from destruction of a home, and then you're requesting the additional resources, and then you have the flex time of 8 to 10 minutes. But we arrived. I was actually on Coast Highway. Heard the dispatch. Our battalion chief Andrew Hill is on duty, and I was right behind him. And when we arrived down at Morningside and Rancho Laguna, right where the fire was started, it was truly only about 50 by 50. The first engines were just pulling the hose, but you could see the steep slope, and you could see that the fire had all the potential in the world to make a run, and there was not going to be much that was going to stop it. There was a lot that was in favor for us. The wind conditions were onshore, so it wasn't going to be a wind-driven event, but it's going to be a fuel-driven fire, especially with the slope. So with that in mind, we just kept those resources coming. Um, the command post with Chief Hill was set up. We tried to set up a little distance away because of what ensued. All the equipment needs a place to position themselves close to the incident when they arrive. So we had a good vantage point up the hill, just about 100, 150 yards, watching and kind of directing the equipment that's coming in. Like the mayor said, at that time I received a phone call from our water district, and it was great that they're reaching out to us saying, we heard there's a reported fire. What do you need, chief? We asked for the helipods to get put into service immediately, and they asked if we needed the water boosted, the pump pressure. So that was taking place within minutes of the dispatch. And then from there, it's really like a lot of the exercises that we run. The resources start showing up. They get the most critical assignments. We position fire apparatus that was coming up above in the Archbeach Heights neighborhood of where the fire was progressing. We gave the roads for the evacuation orders immediately to get those people out of harm's way, which was great through our emergency manager, Sarah Lamonis, who has all of the tools to do the notifications. So that happened rapidly. And then, yeah, I've said it several times, but we've watched this fire go progressively with a lot of energy up the side of that mountain, probably 700 feet or so, just full of dried vegetation. That's about 10 feet thick, tall and thick, that really produced a lot of fuel for that fire. And we had flame lengths anywhere from 35 to 50 feet. And you're standing at the bottom of that, looking up at the homes that are at the top of that ridge, and you're thinking for sure, boy, this is gonna hit them pretty hard. But as that fire progressed up, it hit our fuel modification zone, zone 18, which we just had finished implemented in April of this year. So that work was just done, thinning out that vegetation, and you could see a significant difference of the energy from that fire getting reduced, the flame lengths reduced. And it kind of surprised us because from the vantage point, you couldn't really tell that the vegetation was thin, but you saw the reaction of the fire. And then just within moments, the first helicopter arrived and was dropping the first load of water to protect those homes. So those were the first few minutes and how it played out.
Great job. So now, are you on site at the fire?
I was on site at the fire,
And so do you have
but
direct
knowing my
communication?
job truly is to get to the EOC to start making the decisions with the team, with the city,
Okay,
because there's so many other components. Chief Hill is there directing all the resources and running the fire. He's the incident commander, but my position truly is to be with the city leadership back at the EOC.
gotcha. So when you say you make the call to mutual aid, and I get let's talk about surrounding cities and not necessarily air at this point. Who makes that call, and who are the cities we're calling to jump in and help us?
It's automated through the dispatch system and based off of their availability and proximity to the incident. So through our dispatch center, through MetroNet dispatch center, through Orange County Fire Authority's dispatch center, it's all coordinated through resource requests, and they're sending the closest available resources.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the air alert has come in. We've got, we can call in that coverage. Who decides what is going to happen with the air battle and where they're going to go and when they're going to make their drops and how?
That's a great question. And sometimes there's priorities from us on the ground that we see, but I would say most of the time, you have trained firefighters that are in the helicopters and the aircraft. So they're getting eyes on it, and they actually always have a better vantage point as far as what side of the fire is blowing up. Um, something from our vantage point is we might not see a home or another ridge that it's going to climb or where fire's flaring up. They're usually giving us better intelligence on the fire behavior, and they'll tell us what they believe their priorities are, but they'll clear it through the incident commander. So they usually come in and they'll validate what they see as a priority. And as additional resources start coming, there is air attack, especially when you start to add in the fixed wing, the airplanes that can't slow down or change directions very quickly like the helicopters can. And so air attack is usually hovering at a higher elevation above the fire, and they're coordinating those resources.
Well, I always say kudos to our city government too. The leadership of Alex, Sue Kempf before Alex, and kind of preparing this community. I mean, with your help, obviously, but to get those areas around the homes and everything cleared, to put in the helipad to grab water from and everything like that. Why don't you talk about how that impacts you all when you're fighting a fire to be able to draw on that investment that the city government has put into place?
Absolutely. The fuel modification zones, a lot of people know, but they're long permitting processes. In fact, it's so arduous, and there's a lot of bureaucracy for us, and it takes years to get those approved, just because we're have the influence from the Coastal Commission, and there's protected species of plants. And so when we go in finally and we get the permits, we're removing the vegetation with the knowledge that we're not going to be able to take the protected species. So it's truly taking out the annual grass and the light flashy fuels, and we leave a lot of the protected species in place. So we're really just cleaning it up. But by doing so, it does exactly what we saw it do. It takes the energy out of the fire. It doesn't stop a fire's progress. It especially won't stop in a high wind event, the ember cast, which is probably the most dangerous and threatening part of a large fire front approaching a populated community. It's the embers that are going to start the small fires throughout a neighborhood. But as the fire front approaches and then hits that fuel modification zone, the reduced fuel, it's buying us time. It's buying us time so we can have those air resources, do the water drops, or the firefighters in place so they could use their hoses to protect those houses. So it worked exactly how it was supposed to yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah, so it's so great, and behind the scenes, we have people at City Hall communicating out to the community about what's going on, and today we came in with the 100% full containment and all the good stuff. But let's now, okay, so not to mean that the fire wasn't huge and wasn't, but we have it under control now. So let's talk about, you get it under control. You now it's kind of the mop up, and how do you investigate it as an arson and try, whether it's this fire or a fire, someplace else. How do you go about finding the culprit to creating, who or how it started?
It's you start with, these fires don't just spontaneously happen. There's always something. There's not an act of nature because there's no lightning, right? So there's always a place at the point of origin of a fire that you can look for something left behind, or at least identify this is where the fire started. In this case, as the community knows, it was pretty obvious with the evidence that was on scene and quickly following some of the reports of the kids leaving the area. And truly, I mean, I hand it to the people in this community that love this community, want to protect this community, and started sharing information and what they saw and knew right away, because they saw this act by these children, and they wanted to make sure that they shared this information so something like this wouldn't, of course, happen again. So it truly started unfolding just by word of mouth, and the police department was notified. There was physical evidence that was on scene that was left behind for the investigators. So the rest, it started just unfolding by itself.
Okay. So, Alex, let me jump back to you, Mr. Mayor. So now the investigation happens. Police do a great job, and they make an arrest. The arrest goes down, if I'm correct on this, they arrest a young teen. They take him to process him for maybe juvenile hall. They're told that that's not the place for him, and he's released to his parents. And one of the things, I'll be honest, that I struggle with, not knowing anything about who this is, how old the person is, in any of that, I struggle sometimes in my own mind to like, is it kids being kids and just being stupid, or is it kids that should know better? And do they have a parental force behind them that is, I mean, I always worried if something like this happened to me, I would go home and have to face my dad. They didn't need to send me to juvenile hall. My dad would have handled it in a completely different way. But that's beside the point. But what is that family facing now in terms of liability and everything? Is there any penalties?
But I think there's sort of two separate paths here. There's the criminal path, and the civil path. And so the criminal path, as you noted, Tom, is, the person who was arrested was 13 years old. So that falls under the juvenile court, which is totally different in how it's treated than, the regular court. And in California, my understanding from what what I know, but what I've just learned about the specific incident is that the it's very hard to be processed at juvenile hall at that age, and it also is going to likely be through diversion, where it'll be through the probation department, and they will, there will be programming. I don't know the details of that. That would be up to the probation department for the County of Orange to figure out, the right way to go about accountability, rehabilitation, all of that as it relates to the incident of allegedly committed by the 13-year-old who we arrested. And then, but there's also a civil liability question. And in Laguna Beach, I think it's very important for all the residents to understand that anyone who has any role in potentially contributing to significant cost or harm to our community, right? Because this could have been deadly had the winds been different, had we not had the response that we did. Any number of reasons this could have been deadly, and lives and property could have been lost. And so, we don't know what the total cost is on our end for paying for all the mutual aid, paying for all of that. But the city attorney is looking at, how we make sure that from a civil liability perspective that we are advancing the taxpayers' interest, and also sending a message of accountability, whether that's through vicarious liability, to the parents of the suspect in question, or whether it's through, perhaps there's another third party who gave the illegal fireworks to this minor, and that person, could potentially, I don't know, right? But what we're doing is we're looking at all options, because it's important that we have accountability, that we mitigate the cost that the taxpayers have to bear, and that's just the approach that makes sense. So the civil path, I think, is where a lot of that accountability as it relates to the cost will occur. From the city side, the juvenile court will make determinations as it relates to, any criminal penalties that the minor will face, which will likely be through a diversion program. But again, that's up to the juvenile court.
Okay. So, Chief, now that we can sit back and take a deep breath, it might have to be a short, quick, deep breath because you never know what's coming next. Reflecting back, I know there were a lot of positives, and it was obvious in what happened. Are there any negatives like that you could look back on and say, we had trouble getting down these streets. We needed to get the areas cordoned off sooner. Anything in hindsight that you go back to your team and you say, we can do better with this next time? Or was it just a classic great operation by your team?
I would say a little combination of both, right? We train, we prepare, a lot of things fell into place. But I think we'd be irresponsible to say that, hey, that was perfect, and we just, wait for the next day. There's so much work that we always have in progress. We always want the notifications and the evacuation. We still have the problem with, it's summertime and Coast Highway was really busy. Yet here we are calling for some evacuation orders. And what if the next step is for further moving into the neighborhood and the fire progresses? What if, it would have reached the structures? Did we have the backup support there? So that's what we're looking at right now. All of those little pieces that we're always trying to make better, even the fuel modification zone. This fire just happened to be in a zone that we just completed, but I still have two in the permitting process. I'm still waiting for a contract to come together so I can evaluate the effectiveness of all the zones that we have. What have we missed? What more should we be doing? So there's always plenty of work to do, and we'll never fall back and say, oh, well, that went really well. I guess we're ready for the next one. Absolutely not the case. Conditions are going to get worse. It's not even really fire season yet here in Southern California. Come October, that vegetation that exploded 2 days ago is going to be even more dry. We'll be faced with some Santa Ana winds in some occasions, and those are truly the tests that we have to face and be prepared for in our readiness.
I know our mayor just ordered a bunch of bumper stickers that say "Eat goats, eat." Um, Mayor, so you went down to the EOC. We had a very positive outcome. Same question to you. Looking at the EOC, the operation, the orders, anything in hindsight that could have been done better? Are you completely happy with the community and the way everybody responded? What's your take?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that we really focused on that I think we did a good job at was trying to get as many facts out there to the public as soon as possible to give them comprehensive information of what was happening. I think that was done well. I think we need to continue to look at Nixle and making sure that every resident is signed up for Nixle because it is just so critical that everyone gets those messages when they need to. And then from the policy perspective of fighting fires, that's ultimately going to be, the chief who would have those recommendations. I think Council Member Whalen made a really good point at our council meeting that aerial fighting, planes and helicopters are really key to every wildfire. And we were in a situation where we had a lot of availability in terms of, because there weren't other fires going on. But you think back to what happened in the beginning of this year and, with the Altadena fire, the Eaton fire, the Palisades fires, in a situation where there's a lot of other fires going on in Southern California, we want to make sure that South Orange County has the necessary air support because that will be really ultimately critical for us. And so that will be, I think the chief will have conversations with the Orange County Fire Authority, who I just think that it was amazing to watch them in action. So I think that's something that we really need to be thinking about. I think we need to continue looking at, the the chief mentioned that April was when we were able to finish that fuel modification zone. That was a multi-year process, as I understand it, through CEQA, the state of California. We had to go through the Coastal Commission, and I believe we had to go through NEPA because we got federal FEMA funds. That is ridiculous. That kind of red tape is why people are so disillusioned with what's happening in California. And so that needs to be rolled back. And I think the governor's recent CEQA streamlining, I think it actually addressed some of that. But that is just totally unacceptable when we have the fire risks that we have in this state. So from a policy perspective, I think that's something that we, need to continue looking at. But yeah, beyond that, I look forward to having the after action report because I think you can always learn, you can always do better, and so it was a really good event. But again, we can always do better. There's more technology we need to continue looking at as we implement our updated wildfire plan for 2025.
So I'll just say it. When you have something like this happen, it's a after the fact. It's probably no greater time than to go to residents and say, okay, now we've said before you need to clear this stuff out of the way. We really need to clear it out of the way. That's A. B, Chief, if there's anything you need to fight fires, now's the time to ask the city. I'm sure Alex will open up his budget. And Alex, I'm glad you're looking at technology and everything. And I know there's a huge cost to all that stuff, but
Yep.
I will say it to both of you, job well done. From a media standpoint, the communication from the city to us was exemplary. We felt like we were in touch and we knew what was going on. And just to watch you all and the way you kept everybody abreast of what was going on was just a job well done. So thank you. Thanks for joining us today, and good luck on the deep breath. And let's get back and keep our eyes on things.